Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on TLBTV network and brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and today we're going to talk about jump-starting the economy. I'm broadcasting from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida, which is on America's beautiful Space Coast. If you've never been here before, you really need to visit the Space Center. It's just right across the river from us. We can watch all the launches right from our balcony if you can make it here. So in doing this show, everybody's wondering about what's going to happen with the new tax code, the revisions to the tax code, I should say. It's not going to be new. It's going to be the same old tax code. They're just going to manipulate it some. That's what politicians do. And we're supposed to trust them, and which is what we do, and we should not, but that's our paradigm. And so I talked about paradigms before, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. And we'll talk about Pareto's law of mathematics. We talked about that. And we're going to talk about taxes and the economy and the balancing the budget. But also I'm going to add something new, and it's going to be a 5-letter word. It starts with a V, and it's called value. And if we're paying taxes, shouldn't we get some value for that? But I don't think we do, because our politicians aren't interested in value. Let me tell you about politicians. And I know I'm going to upset a lot of people and probably going to lose some subscribers, but hey, what the heck, I have to tell the truth. Politicians are typically lawyers. And my experience with lawyers is some of them are smart, some of them aren't. Some of them can do some things and some of them can't. But the biggest majority of them have a couple basic skills, and that's speech making and fundraising. Oh, that sounds just like what our politicians do. So here's what politicians do. They tell us a lot of stuff. In other words, they spread the BS around in their speech making, and then they pick our pockets and take our money from us on the basis that they're going to go to Washington, D.C., and they're going to do something special for us. And they're going to make our lives so much better. And now our whole economy and our standard of living and everything that we hold dear to us, they're going to send our kids to college. Oh, they're going to do everything for us. But really what happens is we go out and we vote for these people, and then the next morning after they made they have their big party the night of the election, their victory party, and those who lose, they go away. Maybe they come back and run again, or they go back and do whatever. So they have their victory speech, and they have their big victory party. And the next morning, guess what they do? They start making speeches pleading for you to give them more money for their past election campaign, which probably went in the red, and getting money for the next election campaign 2 years from now. Isn't that special? As the church lady would say, isn't that special that we are so foolish that we'll continue to give them this money? And so we say, yeah, but our guy is great. It's all the rest of those 434, they're really bad. We got to get rid of them, get them all out of here, because you can't trust them, they're no good. But my guy is good, or my gal is good. Wow. How does that work? I want to tell you something. I've met a few congressmen that I've known pretty well. And I know a couple of them are really honorable people and hardworking people, and they had some talents and skills. But most of them that I've met, no. Listen, folks, they're not representing us. They don't even know how to represent us. They have no idea how the government works. Here in Brevard County, I'm not going to mention his name. You can look it up. But we've got a representative that everybody loves. And this guy is supposed to be great. And he's probably better than average as far as they're concerned. But this guy, listen to him. He does town hall meetings on the phone. So we can pick up the phone when he has one, and we can listen to town hall meetings. And I'm sitting there punching numbers on the phone. I got a landline here, believe it or not, I still have a landline. And it's some kind of a console phone where you can punch numbers in. And I'm trying to get in to talk to this guy, but I've never been able to do it. And there's people calling him up, and they're asking him questions about the national debt and the deficit. And this guy has no clue what the national debt and the deficit are, doesn't know the difference between the two of them, and has no idea what the numbers are. And he's giving out information to people, and people are listening to it and saying, oh, it must be right, because this is our guy, and we love him, we trust him, and he's the most wonderful person in the world. And the guy doesn't know anything. He has no idea about how the economy works. Now, let's talk about the economy. I'm getting weary thinking about all this. The economy, we're told now the new normal. For the last 8 years, we've been brainwashed. We've been programmed into thinking the new normal is a 1% growth of the economy. Really? A 1% growth? I don't know how well that's going to work. I don't know. People have no idea what the GDP is, GNP. Nobody knows what the difference between all that stuff is. Hey, I got it all in my book. If you read my book, hey, here it is right here. I explain all this to you in common sense terms. I got people who's in the book who are discussing this, and they talk about all these things. So they teach you all these things, and they do it in discussion like we're talking, like we're sitting in a bar someplace, or we're having some wings in at Buffalo Wings. Oh, no, we ain't going there anymore, are we? Since they decided that, you know, they ain't ever going to play the national anthem because it is divisive and it might offend some people in there. So we're going to mute the sound on the national anthem now in Buffalo Wings. See how crazy this country is? I'm just giving you examples of all the stupid things that are happening, and we're programmed to accept all this stuff. We say, hey, wow, let's burn those crosses. Let's take those crosses down. Let's take those statues down. Let's do all this kind of stuff. Let's burn the Confederate flag because, oh, that's going to make everything so much better for everybody. So here we got these politicians that are taking care of us that don't know anything about how the economy is. And these are the same people that have convinced us that a 1% growth is the new normal. That's the new normal, 1% growth. Well, let me tell you, folks, unless we go to socialism, which has been successful every place, like Russia and Romania and Cuba and Venezuela, socialism has been successful in every one of those places. And you saw what the end result was. The end result was people in poverty, people being regulated by elite overlords. So that's what that's all about. So in order to have a free market capitalist system, we have to have about 3 to 4% growth, annual growth. That's what it has to be. And there's no reason why in America, with all the resources we have, with all the skilled people we have, and the culture we have, the civilization we have, everything we have in this country, there's no reason why we can't have 3 to 4% growth. And if we have 3 to 4% growth, then that's money that's in the economy, is circulating in the economy, and that generates some revenue for the government. But when the government is taking our money in taxes, that takes money out of the economy, and therefore we only have a growth of about 1%, so we end up going in debt. And our national debt now is excessive, is more than $20 trillion. And that's about what our gross domestic product is. And when the GDP and the national debt are about equal, that means when it approaches about 100%, that means we're going to go bankrupt. And in a sense, I think we are bankrupt right now, but you can't accept that because the politicians have never told you that. And you're waiting for them to tell you whether we're bankrupt or not. And of course, they ain't going to tell us that because they're going to all be out of the job if they do that. So what are they going to do? They're going to have somebody bail them out. And how are they going to have somebody bail them out? They did that back in 1913. They created the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve System is not federal, and it's not reserves, and it's not a bank. It's an outside source, an outside entity that Congress gave the ability to make money and distribute that money and manipulate that money in our economy to the point where $1, one shiny silver dollar back in 1913 had the spending power of 100 copper pennies. Now, $1 in America, we don't have silver dollars anymore. We got paper money, which is worthless. It's the same. Actually, monopoly money has more value than your paper money that you got from the Fed. It has a purchasing power somewhere between 2 to 3 tarnished copper pennies. But your wages haven't gone up, but your purchasing power has gone down because that's the way the Fed is regulated. So what are we going to do? I told you we're going to jumpstart the economy. And here's how you jumpstart the economy. You get it up to at least 4%, so it's really humming along pretty good. But guess what? I've got something here for you, the 2020 Clear Vision for America. And we have a clear tax plan that will bump the economy up to 6 to 8%, and it'll jumpstart it, and it'll do it immediately. As soon as we implement the 2020 tax plan, the Clear Vision tax plan, guess what? We're at 6 to 8%. Now, you're saying, well, that can't be because, Bill, you don't know what you're talking about because you're not a famous economist or author or something like that. Well, let me tell you, those are the people who have got us in the $20 trillion in debt and got us in all these problems we're in the first place. So why don't you listen to somebody who really has thought this thing out and applied some logic and common sense to it? Well, you can't do that because you have your paradigms, and I talked about paradigms, the Swiss watch people. They came up with a digital watch and they were rejected, right? The Swiss themselves rejected their own innovations on a new type of timepiece. And so what happened? A couple of companies, Seiko and Texas Instruments, they were not in that business. They weren't in the timepiece business. They weren't in the watchmaking business. They didn't make clocks. And so their paradigm was, hey, we can do this. We can make something out of this. And they made a lot of money out of that, right? It really changed the world from the point of view of how we look at our timepieces. Also talk about Galileo. What a brilliant guy he was. And did anybody listen to him? No, because they rejected his idea and his research and his whole logic and thought process that the earth and the planets revolved around the sun. They couldn't have that. They actually kind of were flat earth people at that time too, where they believed there was a mountain on each end of the world and it held the sky up and the sun kind of went back and forth. I mean, how ridiculous is this? Well, let me tell you how ridiculous it is. It's almost as ridiculous, that type of thinking, as thinking our politicians are going to somehow get us out of this debt that we're in. And if anybody believes that $20 trillion in debt is nothing, it means nothing, and it could be just laughed off and somebody will come along and pay it off. Maybe Trump will pay it off. Everybody thought Obama would pay it off out of his stash, but that didn't work, did it? In fact, the national debt doubled from about 10 trillion to 20 trillion during his 8 years. So let's say I come up with a great idea, but because nobody knows who I am, my idea has to be rejected. Just like, I went to the publishing companies and they rejected my book, and I talk to people about buying my book and they reject my book because they say, hey, it's not a real book. And then I say, well, it really is a real book, you know, it's got a spine. And they say, well, it can't be any good because you're not #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, or, you know, your book isn't one of the top books on Amazon.com, or I can't find it in Barnes and Noble. Well, there's a reason for that, because they don't want books in there on their list and in their stores, because they got their own books they want to sell, and they got their own authors that they're promoting. And so unless it's one of them, you can't get published, so you get rejected. Let's say I came up with a new idea on photography, and it's in the 1930s, actually even before I was born, huh? And I walk into a large company that is in the photography field, and you can look this up on the internet. So here I am, I come in there and I've got a box and I got a mirror and I got some black powder and I got a light, and I put this on the research and development director's desk, and I go through this whole thing with this, and I'm doing everything, and I got this black dust all over, and I shine this bright light, and all of a sudden, guess what? I have an image. And the guy looks at me and he's thinking, wait a minute, this isn't my paradigm, and this guy's got this black dust all over my desk, and this can't work. So I throw him out. Oh, guess what I just discovered and I just demonstrated to you that was rejected? And you want to know something? You guys do this every day of your lives, and you have been for years. It's called xerography. Xerox machines. Now everybody makes Xerox machines besides Xerox. Just about every Japanese company makes them. And they're a lot more sophisticated now today, and you can program them. You can even Wi-Fi them, and you can do anything you want with them. You can print them in color. You can have them collate stuff, punch holes and stuff. You can do all kinds of things with them. But the guy that came up with the idea and went in and presented it, he got thrown out of the office, right? They sent him out. Yeah, dumb. You know, I can't say that word, but they didn't think too much of him. And of course, the guy didn't like some of the black dust that got on his desk. So anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Here's what happens. We continually reject all the good ideas because we don't believe they can happen, because they've programmed us to believe that these things can't happen. But we can jumpstart our economy with a 6 to 8% growth, and we can sustain a 6% growth in the economy forever. How can we do that? Well, for one thing, you're saying, well, we're always going to have recessions. Well, let me tell you, you know what causes recessions? There's sort of a natural ebb and flow to business. There's no question about that. But our beloved Federal Reserve manipulates the currency in such ways that they cause the recessions because it's to their advantage. That's how they make these extreme profits, by manipulating our money. It's the money changers and the banks that are making the money. They make monies off of wars, and they make monies off of recessions. They make money every way you can think of by manipulating our money. And I wrote it. I'm exhausted. I wrote it in my book. It's all in here. I have a chapter on it that explains it all. I tell how things have happened to our country that are just unbelievable. Let me give you an example of something that's in the book. You ever hear of the Panama Canal? Oh, yeah, you heard about that. Even boats go through that. Of course, we gave it away to the Chinese, but other than that, we built it. And you know how much it costs to build? It costs $50 million to build. Actually, it's $49.8 million or something like that. But anyway, it cost $50 million to build. That was back in the early 1900s, before the Federal Reserve started manipulating our money and inflated everything, so you could actually buy something for money. So we built this thing, and so we borrowed money instead of the United States Congress doing what they were supposed to do and managing the money and being responsible for the supply of money, just like the Constitution tells them to, they gave that away. And so they borrowed the money. And so how much did we actually pay for the Panama Canal? 50 million? No, 125 million, because that's what happens when we borrow all this money and we inflate this money. We ended up paying $125 million for something that we could have very easily done for $50 million. That's what it cost. What the difference of what it cost and the difference of what we paid were two different things. So we paid $125 million for a $50 million project. That would be like if you wanted to go out and buy a real expensive luxury car. I don't know how much they cost right now. I've looked at some of them and they're getting kind of high. But let's say you want to buy one for $50,000. So you go out and buy it and you take out a loan because you don't have the $50,000 cash. You're not like my dad who only bought things on cash after he saved the money up. So now you make your payments and they tell you, oh, you just make so many easy payments for, so many years. And it turns out that now, it used to be when you bought a car, when I was very young, you got a car and your payments were 2 years. That's what you paid. You paid off your loan in 2 years. You had a trade-in or a down payment and you paid off the balance in 2 years. That was what your loan was. Then as I got a little bit older, it went to 3 years. And then I got a little bit older and it went to 4 years, and then 5 years, and now 6 years. So in 72 months, you're going to pay off your car. And what that does, it makes the loan amount, the loan payment, look kind of low. But you end up paying $125,000 for that car. That was a $50,000 car. Let me tell you, you buy a house. Let's say you buy a house for $200,000. Maybe in our area down here, you can probably get a pretty decent house for that. Certainly livable. First house I bought back in 1964 was a beautiful 4-bedroom house. I mean, it was tops. $24,000. $24,000. Now to get that same house, you have to pay $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 depending on where you live. If you live out in San Francisco, you've got to pay $1.2 million, right? And you can't even buy a house in New York because there's none available. So let's say you buy a house for $200,000 and you sign a $30 loan mortgage. And so you get your mortgage payments and you pay your mortgage off in 30 years and you end up paying $500,000 for it. Who made the money? The banks made the money. The money changers made the money. All the people that bought and sold your mortgage loan made the money. So how do we get around this? What we have to do is we have to end the Fed, but we got to end the tax code. So I've explained to you why you don't believe my tax code will work, but I'm going to try and convince you that it will. And I know you're going to reject me, and that's okay because I'm used to being rejected. Hey, I've been rejected all my life. So let's talk about this a little bit. I talked about corporate taxes. Who pays the corporate taxes? You do. Yeah, you pay the corporate taxes. You think we're soaking the big rich white guys. But who owns the corporations? It's you and me in our 401ks and our IRSs and our SEPs, SEP plans. That's for employers like myself, self-employed people. So that's where we got all of our money. And it's all invested for us in usually through mutual funds, which are, I think, a good thing. Invest in all these various evil corporations that we hear about. And so if they don't have any growth, we don't have any growth unless we manipulate the stock market. How do we manipulate the stock market? Well, you and I can't manipulate the stock market, but the Federal Reserve can, if they keep the interest rate down to practically zero. Do you want to save your money in the bank and in your piggy bank or whatever? No, you're going to put it in the stock market because you can get more than 0% interest in the stock market. You're not going to put it in CDs because you're only going to get 0.5% unless you get like a 7-year job, and then you can maybe get a percent or 1.5%, and then you got your money tied up for 7 years. Okay, well, the banks love that because they got your money. And now they own your money. You don't own your money. Actually, it's not your money anyway. It's the Federal Reserve's money. And they all make us believe, because we have paradigm paralysis, that it's our money. But it ain't really our money. Okay, so how do we get this? Corporate taxes should be zero. But what they do is they use the same tax code, and they say, well, we'll make it 35%. No, it should be 39.7%. No, we'll drop it down to 25%. Oh, we got the highest tax rate in the world, in the industrialized world. Oh, we hear all these things, and do you ever stop to think, wait a minute, does any of this stuff make any sense? Does any of this really ring true? Is there any logic to it? No. They're telling us all these things that keep us confused, and we just say, well, we'll let our congressmen handle it, our representatives, because we're not going to get involved in politics. Why should we get involved in politics? We're not politicians. That's why we hire these guys, and we pay these guys good money, so they'll take care of us, but they don't. So if the corporate tax was zero, do you think that people, corporations in America, if they didn't have to pay any taxes, would be sheltering up to $3 trillion overseas and having all their business done overseas? No, they would keep the money back here in America. In fact, all that money would be flowing back here in a rush. It'd be like a waterfall. It'd be like Hurricane Irma coming through so fast. That money would be coming in the United States. You'd see the dollars flying through the air because they wouldn't have to pay taxes. As long as they have to pay taxes, they're going to protect themselves. They're going to protect their money. And they do that. Why not? Why shouldn't they do that? Same way you and I would protect our money. Okay, so let's also presume that the capital gains tax, which I explained to you, should be zero because it's immoral to tax people who invest in their own economy, in their country's economy. Okay, what are people going to do? They're going to say, wait a minute, no tax on capital gains? I'm putting my money in there. And so guess what all that money infused in the economy is going to do? Companies are going to use that to expand, to do research and development, to develop new products, to hire more people, hire salespeople, hire technicians, hire mechanics, hire everybody you can think of, assembly workers. And what you're going to see is companies from all over the world, multinational corporations are all going to come fleeing to America and say, hey, we want in on this stuff. We want this no tax deal. They'd be building their factories here, taking some of the factories that have closed down and opening them up, remodeling them, revitalizing them, rejuvenating them. And can you see how our economy would just jumpstart and explode to 6 to 8% overnight if that was able to happen? But our politicians have this tax code deal going on now where they're talking about taxes, and they say, well, we got to do the healthcare thing before we do the tax thing. They got more excuses in the world that you can think of, and yet nothing's going to change for us. All they're going to do is manipulate the percentages a little bit. It ain't going to make a bit of difference. You gotta have a whole new approach, and in order to have a whole new approach to the tax code, you have to break your paradigm. Now, I said we're going to talk a little bit about value. What kind of value are you really getting for the tax dollars you're spending? You know, we've got so much waste in government. We're not getting any value. And so we have corporations that spend billions of dollars every year. And I figured it out. We spend 2 million people, how can I explain this? If a person works a 2,000-hour year, that's a typical year. 40 weeks a year times 40 hours a week times 50 weeks is 2,000 hours. That's one equivalent person, a full-time, an FTE, a full-time employee. We are spending the equivalent of 2 million people a year doing nothing but tax preparation. Think of that. If those 2 million people are doing this, what kind of value are they giving to our economy? They're not giving us any value. They're not increasing the value of anything. They're doing stuff that actually is regressive. It does not help the economy. It takes away from the economy, because all that money that goes into spending money on tax preparation should be out in the economy, hiring people that can make things and sell things and service things that can make the economy better. Believe me, I know how this works. I've been doing this. I've been watching this all my life. I understand this. And that's what we need to do to jumpstart the economy. Now you're saying, well, your tax plan will never work because they'll never go for it. Well, it'll work. You know how it'll work? It'll work when all of us get together and say, look, guys, we ain't buying into this business anymore. We're not brainwashed anymore. We're not programmed anymore. We're not ignorant anymore. We're busting our paradigms, and we're saying there's a better way to make a watch. There's a better way to make a copy machine. There's a better way to look at the sun going around the earth, or the earth going around the sun. Gee, I'm as bad as they were in the 1500s now. Okay. Can we finally get to the point where we say, hey, I want to learn more about this tax code, and I'm going to tell a lot of other people about it, because that's what happens with grassroots things. That's what happened with Lindner and Bortz's fair tax plan, where they got all these people so hyped up about the fair tax because they saw some value in it, and they thought, this is great, this will help the economy, and it would. If I were to take the present tax code, and I wouldn't, it needs to be burned. If, you know, boy, that would be a bonfire, wouldn't it? More than 80,000 pages. Flat tax is far superior to that. Fair tax is far superior to the flat tax, and the 2020 Clear Vision tax plan, the American Vision tax plan, is far superior to all the rest of them. So why would you not want to learn about this? Well, and why wouldn't you want to tell people about it? Why wouldn't you want to have that in our economy, where our economy has jump-started to 6 to 8%, and now we're bringing home twice as much money as we were before? Wouldn't you like to do that? Well, you can't do it as long as you cannot bust your paradigm and think outside the box and get on board and say, okay, Bill, I'm going to learn about this, and I'm going to be a disciple. I'm going to tell people about this. You know, there's links somewhere in this article that you guys, and wherever they put them this week, there's links in there that tell us, hey, we can learn and we can do something. So we can do something positive. So anyway, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and read my newsletter, subscribe to my newsletter, tell everybody about it. Help me out a little bit here. I'm not making any money off of this. I'm doing this all for you. I'm doing this for our country. I'm doing this for our kids and our grandkids. All I'm asking you to do is just tell other people about it. Learn about it and tell other people about it, and spread the word about it, so we can get to a point where we can save our country. Just like those early printers back in 1776 said, when they printed the Declaration of Independence in their paper, one said, God save our America. That's what I want to do. I want to save our America. So anyway, remember what I told you. before, there's a proverb, 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. Remember that, where there is no vision, the people perish. And the 2020 vision is my life. My life is a 2020 vision. So God bless you all. Thank you all for watching. It's been a pleasure bringing you the news, the good news for the economy. And I hope to see you again, because we're going to do this one more time, and I'm going to explain to you in detail just exactly how simple the 2020 Clear Vision tax plan works, and how you're going to be paying 10% on your earnings instead of 50% on your income. And the economy is going to be great, and everybody's going to have jobs. And when everybody has jobs, they don't have time to go out and burn flags and tear down statues, because they're all going to be working. Okay. Thank you so much, boys and girls. See you next time. And God save our America.